Okay, now you have really tested your game or your prototype with your friends and colleagues, and of course you need to refine and use your key learnings and implement them into the game. And so you should adjust things, you should elaborate the places where things were unclear, and develop the game further and make actually a new prototype. Perhaps I hope there's a lot you can keep, but there will be things that probably needs to be adjusted at this time. And what you should of course take care is that you patch up those holes that your friends have found, or the problems or imbalances or whatever has come up. And the trick here is of course not to add more complexity into the game. We have had this discussion about simplicity, and you should try to maintain as much simplicity as possible, but still fixing whatever problems had come up. Now is also the time to perhaps spend a little more time on the artwork, on the whatever colors or illustrations you're using in the game. When you are elaborating on your prototype, make a little more artwork, make some good illustrations, or use color a bit more to help people understand the game. Often a lot of misunderstandings can be avoided if the game just makes it very simple with some symbols or color uses, how you are going to use your different components. And that's the artwork that should solve this issue. And generally there can be a kind of conflict between art and game mechanics. And what happens here is that you can be carried a little bit away with the artwork, making things look very nice and flashy or delicate or whatever. That should always be within the framework of the game mechanics. So the artwork should never be carried away if it makes the game harder to use. For example, when you're trying to make things look very nice in an art kind of way, you would like your printing to be very small, because that makes stuff look really good. But small fonts make it very difficult to see things from a distance. So remember all the time that it has to be playable and has to be easy to navigate through the game. But use your forms, your colors, your fonts, your symbols, and to make it easy to use the game. And also you should revise the rules with whatever the game test came up with. And a really good test of your rules at this stage would be to give the rules to a friend who doesn't know the game. Tell him or her to read the rules and then come back and explain the game to you, or whoever person has been writing the most on the rules. That is something that can really give you an insight into how is this received. Very often they won't understand anything from the rules, because you find out that there's a lot that you really only know you haven't written out, but what you have taken for granted that others can understand it. And that will become very clear when you ask somebody else to read it through and explain it back to you. And it'll also make it very clear which illustrations you need to put into your rules in order to make it more understandable what you're talking about. So you should be making a new prototype in this way, and your key decisions is, of course, how do we mend each problem that came up through the gaming with our friends, and especially how can the games or rules become easier to learn or get into. And it's time to move on when you have a complete game with rules and boards and components that others can open and play with.